Overcast. Most of you probably don't know what that is, so let me fill you in. A little while ago, I posted a few videos about a indie game I'm working on with a few friends of mine called Overcast, and it's been quite a while since I've given any update on that, and that's partly just because the videos didn't do very well. I mean, it's only fair. Sure, you see your occasional indie game devlog video that goes viral, but what I was showing off really wasn't all that remarkable, or really remarkable at all, just a pretty standard 2D platform game that needs a lot of polish, especially compared to my usual content. My Terraria bosses, they are way more impressive than anything I've shown relating to Overcast, and also Terraria is just a more popular IP, so it's much easier to get an audience there. But there is another reason I haven't been giving many updates on Overcast, and that is because, well, to say the development has been rough would be a bit of an understatement. We hope to have the game ready for release by August this year, and that's not a guarantee. We'll just have to wait and see if it's feasible, but we did only start last year, so if we are able to finish by August, which I'm fairly confident that we can, that'll be a pretty impressive development time.
That one didn't age quite so well.
And it's to be expected. This is our very first time trying to make an independent game, but we really made a lot of mistakes that cost us a great deal of time and energy. But no more beating around the bush now. The purpose of this video is to just kind of explain what the current situation is and how we got here to the 10 people who are still interested, and also to serve as maybe just kind of a good case study, so that if you ever get into game development yourself, you can watch out for all the mistakes we made and hopefully avoid them. So without further ado, let me tell you the story of Overcast. Ever since I've known that video games existed as a concept, the idea of making a video game myself has always fascinated me. Making Terraria mods has been a significant step in the right direction, but in order to truly take it to the next level, I would need to learn how to use Game Maker or some other platform for making video games. I actually dabbled in this in making kind of just a silly joke game, which I also published a video for, but eventually I and two of my friends who go by Vel and DameFallen decided it was time to actually try and make a serious video game that we might sell to people. A couple ideas were thrown around, but we ultimately decided to make it a 2D platformer game with a standard left-to-right level format. We didn't want to set our sights too high, this being our first game, and we figured that by going with this grounded approach it'd be quite manageable for us. Little did we realize how wrong we were, but more on that later. After settling on that, we decided to come up with a story for our game and begin planning how the game would be built around it, and this is one of the first big mistakes that I'd like to talk about. I mean, by all means, put a story in your game. If it's good, it will enhance the experience, but do not make the game serve the story. Make the story serve the game. From day one that we started working on Overcast, we had decided that all aspects of the gameplay had to conform to the story, and if we were going to make any significant changes to it, we would also have to rewrite the story to make sure it made sense before moving forward, and this was a massive problem. It's difficult to really describe how this affected the game, but it felt very stunted. We felt obligated to do a lot of things that just weren't working because it had to be a part of the game, because the story mentioned it. We felt obligated to make many design choices that felt clunky and awkward because they had no justification for being in the game besides it has to be this way so it will line up with the story. So again, if you're making a game, make sure the story complements the gameplay instead of hindering it, and if you find it doing the latter, make the story conform to the gameplay, not the other way around. So what is the story of Overcast anyway? Well, I'll tell you. You play as a knight named Sigurd running from a mountain-sized monster called Abaddon that is going to destroy all life on the planet, and your only hope for survival is to hide under a mountain which is called Mount Haven and is very far away. You'll always know when Abaddon is approaching because the sky will be covered with green clouds, which is why the game is called Overcast, by the way, in case that wasn't obvious. The game takes place over 7-ish levels where you run from left to right, and you'll encounter several foes on your journey, like a crazy cultist who thinks you should just let Abaddon kill you, an undead king, and an old army friend who thinks you're crazy until he also sees Abaddon and runs too. Oh yeah, and before going to Mount Haven, Sigurd has to make a detour to save his fiancée, Melody, and bring her with him. Melody has absolutely no effect on the gameplay, by the way. She exists purely for sake of the story. See what I mean? Though, it's not all bad, of course, since Abaddon, the driving force of the story, is an almost constant threat, appearing in any level if you take too long to complete it, and given how long they are, there's a good chance you'll be running from him by the end. There are also some scripted encounters with Abaddon too, so you can't miss him. So, where did we go from there? Well, things got off to an alright start. Vel was mostly in charge of the sprites, and still is. DameFallen was in charge of miscellaneous mechanics, the player's moveset, cutscenes, and the physics system. And I, of course, was in charge of the level design and bosses, and I occasionally made an enemy or a hazard too. But that is where the problems began. Because DameFallen was making the player moveset and I was making the levels, they were not at all fit for one another. It seemed like a good idea at the time, splitting up those two duties, but in hindsight, things would have been much better if I had done both the player moveset and the levels, because then I could have perfectly tuned them from one another. As it stands, things are better than they were, but for a while the two just felt completely incompatible and awful to play. So that's another lesson for you. If you're making a game with someone else, make sure you don't improperly split up the duties, because if you have one person make the levels and another person make the player moveset, don't be surprised when they fit like a foot in a glove. On top of that, another major problem is that I never really figured out what I actually wanted the levels to be until it was way too late. Were they supposed to be speedrun levels? Precision platformers? Combat focused? In hindsight it seems so stupid, but I ended up making each level pretty much an unholy mix of the three, so that none of them worked. You couldn't go fast because with the way the player moved and the size of the camera, you had to be constantly checking your pace to make sure you didn't smack right into an enemy, but also the enemies were annoying and there was no reason to fight them, so either you would stop and kill them and realize it was a total waste of time, or you'd be smart and just keep running, treating them as just a mild road bump. And as for precision platforming, well, it didn't work. The moveset was not designed at all for tight jumps, so it just didn't work, and it felt absolutely awful to play. And at that point, I knew something was wrong. I really should have just stopped and reassessed the situation, realized this was not working, and looked for a better way. We just kept hammering away at it. I got this idea that if we just sank enough time and energy into the game, that it would just start being fun. And before you knew it, pretty much every level we planned to make was complete. And they all had the exact same problems, except maybe the Mountain City area, for the simple reason that there was no speedrunning or parkour. It was just pure mindless combat. Each room would have a horde of enemies, and once you killed them, you could move on to the next room. And you know there's a problem when your best level just boils down to running back and forth while holding down the left mouse button and occasionally jumping. So that's another lesson for you. If you realize your game isn't fun to play, stop and address the problem. Don't make the whole game with the same issue and then address the problem. It'll save you so much time. This probably won't surprise most of you, but by far the best feature in the game is the bosses, but even they were not great when they were first made. I'm really happy with how they all are now. I think I've done a great job with making them creative and fun, but until very recently, they've all been, for the most part, very unfair and kinda lazy. It took Vel playtesting the game for the first time to reveal to me just how unfair these bosses really were, and I really wasn't giving it my all when making them. I kinda had fun, but there were a lot of things that I knew I could do to make them better and more creative that I just didn't do because I didn't feel like it. As a result, they felt pretty flat compared to what you've seen in my Terraria mod, and it took me revisiting them several months, or in some cases even a whole year after first quote-unquote finishing them, to turn them into fights that I can now genuinely say I'm proud of. There's definitely some lesson to be learned from that, but it's a bit harder to pin down. It's not as simple as just do everything you possibly can, because video game design, and especially boss design from my experience modding Terraria, is a constant balance between putting in enough effort to achieve a good result while also not working yourself sick. But I guess for now I can say, if you're working on a boss and you just don't feel enthusiastic enough about it to actually put in the effort to make it good, then you either need to change your approach or just take a break, because if you're not excited about your own boss, why should anyone else be? But on the topic of balancing workload, oftentimes when making Terraria bosses I've encountered this phenomenon where I'd have something planned out, but when I was actually going to make it, I would get apprehensive because it was going to be a lot of work, and some sometimes you do just have to power through, but I'd get to wondering if it was really worth it. And then I'd think of a much easier way to do it that would be almost as good, or in some cases, it'd be just as good or even better than what I'd originally planned, and it would take less than half as much work. Which brings me neatly into the next big mistake we made, which mostly concerns Abaddon's design. You see, right now you can see on screen that Abaddon is simply a wall that comes from the left side of the screen to the right. A very simple approach, but it works and it's fairly intimidating. But originally I had the idea that Abaddon should be a dragon, and Vel tried very hard for several months to make a giant dragon sprite that would actually work, and it just wasn't working. The physics for it was a nightmare because we couldn't have him just gliding from one side to the other. We needed him to actually move up and down with the terrain, and the sprite just didn't look good. And we spent an embarrassingly long time trying to make this work when it just wasn't working, until finally either Vel or DameFallen approached me and suggested that we just make him a wall. And that was a great idea. Not only did that take way less work, but also it looks better. It doesn't have any of the physics problems, and despite the fact that I'm not really the biggest fan of the wall design, it's undeniably way scarier than the dragon ever was. So the lesson from that is know when to cut corners. Look for those opportunities in game design where you can do less work for just as good a result, or in some cases an even better result. It is absolutely vital for your time and also for the quality of the game. In fact, the Abaddon timer that causes him to show up after long enough in a level, the thing that gives the game its identity, didn't even exist until very recently because we just couldn't make the whole dragon thing work with some of these rooms, so he only showed up in scripted sections. On the bright side, one thing that has been going pretty well is the music development for the game. Basically, DameFallen and I have both been composing music tracks for the game and its levels and boss fights, and well, I wouldn't say anything we've made is phenomenal, but I've learned a lot about music design since I've started, and I feel like that's a skill that'll be pretty useful in the future. I've made some tracks that I am quite proud of. Some not so good. I'll probably have to go back and redo them now that I know more of what I'm doing, but all in all, it's gone pretty well. So, what's next for Overcast? Well, the hard truth that it took a while for me to accept is that Overcast was never going to be a masterpiece. Maybe if we hadn't made some of those mistakes, it could have been a lot better, but I don't think it was ever going to be better than an okay game. And ultimately, it was all worth it. Although there were plenty of times where I absolutely hated the game and didn't want to work on it, I did have some fun, and now I feel like I'm having a much better time working on it now that we've reversed some of our mistakes. And the main point of this was to just teach us how to make games, and we've learned a lot. We know all the mistakes that you need to avoid, and quite a few other things, so next time we make a game, hopefully we'll be able to put that knowledge to good use and make something truly spectacular. But until then, I'm okay with the progress we've made. As for Overcast itself, we're still gonna publish the game, probably for a rather humble price, since even I can't say that this game is any better than okay. Right now, we're just working on polishing things up and trying to address the problem with the level design. We've removed a lot of the enemies from the levels, and of course implemented the new Abaddon timer mechanic, which makes them a lot more fun, and we've also managed to make the move improvements that work a lot better with the levels, despite being made by a different person than me, the level designer. I mean, I know I haven't done the best job documenting, so you can't really see, but this game looks way better now than it did, say, 10 months ago, or even 3 months ago. We've made some astounding improvements over the course of these last few months. Once we finally got our act together, there's still a lot to do, but I think it's safe to say that the worst is over. If you watch this channel mostly for my Terraria videos, that's quite alright, I appreciate the support. And don't worry, I'm by no means done with Terraria, but I do hope to someday take the next step and make a full video game that I can truly call a masterpiece. And if and when I do, hope you'll be there to see it. In the meantime, feel free to like and subscribe and comment your thoughts. All those things help the channel. And a big thanks to DameFallen and Vel for all the work they've done in spite of the difficulties we've encountered. Thank you, goodbye.